Hi, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Gal Pastor. It's February, and you know what that means. Rather than just my usual mood of despising this holiday and bemoaning its consumerism and all the relentless relational pressure, let's think about it in spiritual terms, shall we? And I mean substantial spiritual terms, not just fluff. Here on my channel, I share what I am reflecting on and what I am reading and what enhances my relationship with God. I'm interested in stimulating my faith further, bringing more and more areas of my daily life and struggles in contact with my Christ. I always want to go deeper and wider into the Bible, theology, or Christian history. And I want to share that with you in a way that is accessible and interesting and helpful and perhaps meets your spiritual needs. Since I was baptized into Christian faith at 16, my spiritual life has always been dependent on my habitual engagement with theology, which is the study of God and religious truth. Theology's informed words about God. I must either read or speak or think descriptive words about God in order to have faith and to feel connected to God. But what kind of theology? Aren't there so many theologies? Dogmatic, moral, pastoral, ascetic, mystical, Anabaptist, liberation theology, feminist, systematic, reformed, historical, biblical, revisionist, natural, New Testament, Old Testament theology, end times theology, liberal, social gospel theology, missional, Arminian, holiness, Catholic, scholastic, incarnational, black, practical, Puritan, apologetical theology, theology of nonviolence, to name just a few. This is not an exhaustive list. And these are not very stern, stiff categories, but kind of fluid and intersectional. These theologies are not all equal in size or scope. Some are broad and general views of God. Some are narrow and specific, focused on certain people or ideas and themes or periods in history. It's my observation that our personalities and our intellectual and creative interests align with certain views of God. I think that the words about God that appeal to our intellect and heart are the theologies that fit with our personalities, life experiences, and passions. That doesn't mean that all these different theologies are just relative. I mean that all our theologies are hinting to a greater or lesser extent at the big truth about God. Each kind of theology has a specific interest or emphasis, views God from a certain presupposition. And that point of view appeals to us because of who we are as people. Just like there is a reason you are either in a charismatic or in a liturgical church. You make that choice according to how you are internally and complexly wired to encounter and worship God. Just like you also have a preference of what kind of sermons you like to feed on because of your unique makeup. I think the same is true of theologies we gravitate toward, read about, and grow through. And this will change, of course, with your life, circumstances, and age. And like with the Enneagram, there might be one theological area that captures a lot of your attention, and then you might have several different wings and adjoining interests, because more than one way to talk about God and the Bible appeals to you and inspires your spiritual life. The positive of identifying the kind of study of God that fits you is that you find a way of thinking about God that is meaningful and interesting and stimulating to you, keeps you engaged in spiritual pursuits. The negative, of course, is that this would become the only way you choose to see God, and you miss out on other, possibly equally true and revelatory ways of understanding spiritual things. I'm obviously not discovering sliced bread here. You're likely already doing this and doing it instinctively, pursuing your spiritual interests in accordance with your personality and inner wiring. I'm pointing it out to those who perhaps are in a rut and need a way to figure out how to spend more time with God. But my point is also that theology is not for professionals. It's for everyone. Everyone can and should study God, and that practice is easier and more enjoyable when you figure out how theology can fit with your personality and interests. So, where would the sorting hat place you? What kinds of theology communicates God's love and work best to your spirit? What specific elements of the biblical revelation interest you? What literary genres in general speak to you? What biblical or human themes and topics move you? What are your favorite verses or your favorite stories in the Bible about? What historical Christians do you admire and why? Do you approach study of God primarily with your intellect or your heart primarily? Do you like rational, logical arguments, or are you more instinctual? Do you like organized propositional statements, or are you moved to deeper faith through narrative that is character driven? These are just some of the questions to ask when identifying your type of theology. In honor of Valentine's Day, I'm sharing with you how romantic theology has for a while corresponded with my personality and interests, and therefore met my spiritual needs. Now, this particular way of learning about God has surely existed in many forms since Christ. But the phrase romantic theology itself was coined by a group of people in the first half of the 20th century known as the Oxford Inklings. Here they are, members of the literary club, all authors and some professors at Oxford: C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien. I just recently learned that he died on the day I was born. Charles Williams and Owen Barfield. The circle of their contemporaries that they worked with is wider and includes, among others, Dorothy Sayers as well. A lot of what I'll be sharing here with you comes from the faculty of Northwind Seminary, where one can get a degree in Inklings and or Romantic Theology. I'll share some of the resources and further readings in my description. The inkling that we will focus on the most on this Valentine's Day season is Charles Williams, who published a book on the guiding principles of romantic theology. So, could you yourself enjoy romantic theology? Well, what is it? Cambridge Dictionary defines the adjective romantic as relating to love or a close loving relationship, firstly, and secondary, exciting and mysterious and having a strong effect on your emotions. In Williams's words, the term romantic theology does not imply, as will inevitably at first be thought, a theology based merely on fantasy and dream, and concerning itself only with illogical sentimentalities. It is a theology as exact as any other kind, but having for cause and subject those human experiences which are generally termed romantic. Now, what are those romantic experiences that we can reflect upon theologically. Relational love of all kinds and its byproducts, loyalty, fidelity, courage, sacrifice. Then nature, art, creativity, and just simply put, wonder. What romantic theology does, it interrogates these experiences in order to gather knowledge about life and subsequently about God. In C.S. Lewis's words, a romantic theologian does not mean one who is romantic about theology, but the one who is theological about romance and who considers theological implications of those experiences, we just listed them, that are called romantic. Williams believed that romantic love in particular is a potent clue to understanding God's love and plan for the world. And we'll talk more about that in my upcoming Valentine's Day videos. I'll share from his Romantic Theology of Marriage, also more recently termed Nuptial Theology. Michael Christensen, one of the professors at Northwind Seminary, observes that the Oxford Inklings saw romantic theology as a hybrid field at the intersection of literature and theology. Does that appeal to you? All of them, the Inklings, loved Greek and Norse mythology, Arthurian legends, Celtic sagas, and romantic poetry of Shelley, Keats, Byron, and such. And in their shared vision, they all produced a lasting treasury of theological, spiritual, and fictional writings. I'm sure you read some or saw them on the big screen. In these writings, they united their Christian theology and the romantic spirit. Terry Glaspie from Northwind Seminary says that the big question romantic theology asks is, what do our common human experiences, sometimes referred to as the general revelation, reveal about God and God's work? Lewis, of course, talked about the common human experience of inconsolable longing that we all feel deeply when faced with great beauty in the world. Romantic theology attempts to unpack that longing for further meaning about ourselves and God. The work of romantic theology is to recast our human experiences to point toward God, to God's bigger story, to the meta narrative. Now, what do you need to be a romantic theologian? What are the qualifications? How many years of seminary? One or more graduate degrees? One thing only. The key element, the core ingredient of all the romantic theology is imagination. The concept that is, according to Williams, very often misunderstood. In his words, imagination is generally employed to mean a vague and uncontrolled fancy. In fact, it needs only right direction, and it may then become power. It may become the union of the mind and the heart with a particular vision. After all, the Bible tells the story of God, who is not only a masterful comic engineer, but also an imaginative artist. When Lewis talked about what it takes to find deeper spiritual meaning in the experiences of our beautifully created world, he summed the requirement as baptized imagination. Lewis firmly believed that such baptized imagination can lead to truth and take us right into the heart of the divine reality. He believed that our theology has to reach the heart in order to excite the mind. Romantic theologians, therefore, read and write with the feeling intellect of the heart and not just analyze a set of abstract propositional truths. So, what's the place of creative, baptized imagination in your spiritual life? Why not make this February a month of exploring romantic theology? Give it a go. Put the systematized doctrine away, or put the shallow devotional writings away. Read the Inklings. Read the poetry that inspired them. Read the great novels, read classics. Furthermore, be a romantic theologian in your life by doing the work of ascribing interpretation, of making a lovely, godly, spiritual sense of your experiences and your relationships. Of course, you're doing this already, but now you have a name for that. Romantic theology gives you the license to see the world around you as positively conveying higher meaning and purpose and depth. For me personally, it provides a beautiful framework for applying my baptized imagination to my parenting. I absolutely love gathering deep, complex, layered meaning about God through my relationship with my children. And the formula is simple. Take the images from those fictional or poetic works, or the images from your life, and work the images theologically. We can all be romantic theologians if we work the images presented to our senses and process them with and through our baptized imaginations. So this February, learn about God through traditional romantic means with me.